Artificial love, we just make it up, 'cause reality will never be good enough. And even if it was, we just mess it up, 'cause we already lost, addicted to the rush. I never meant to fall, all I wanted was a touch of artificial love. We just make it up, 'cause
the night stretched endlessly, its silence louder than any scream. Jungkook sat alone in his dimly lit office, the glow of city lights flickering through the glass walls. A half-empty whiskey bottle sat on his desk, the amber liquid untouched for hours. His fingers clutched a delicate bracelet, 𝐊𝐈𝐍𝐍𝐻'𝐵 bracelet, the one he once fastened on her wrist with a smile. Now, it felt like a noose tightening around his soul. His bloodshot eyes fixated on the empty space before him. Yet in his mind, she was everywhere. Her laughter echoed faintly, her gentle voice whispering his name. Memories clawed at his mind, warm moments turned cold, love turned lost. Promise me you'll never leave. Her voice played in his head. He had promised, he had sworn it in his life. But promises were fragile in a world like his, a world built on power. Betrayal and blood. He closed his eyes. And suddenly, the flashes returned. A dark alley, 𝐊𝐈𝐍𝐻𝐵's tear-streaked face. Her trembling voice begging him to stop. The sound of gunshots, blood splattered on cold concrete. And then her hand slipping out of his grasp. No, 𝐊𝐿, Jungkook's voice cracked, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the bracelet tighter. He had built an empire, crushed enemies, destroyed rivals, yet none of it mattered now. His kingdom felt like ashes in his hands. The king had lost his queen, and worst of all, he knew exactly who was to blame. His phone buzzed, dragging him back to reality. A message flashed on the screen. She's still alive. But not for long. Jungkook's eyes darkened, his pain replaced by cold, burning rage. The man who had taken 𝐊𝐿 from him had just made the biggest mistake of his life. I'm coming for you, Jungkook muttered, his voice low and dangerous. The king was about to reclaim what was his, even if he had to burn the whole city down to do it. When love found the king, the rain poured relentlessly that evening, turning the city streets into rivers of chaos. Jungkook leaned against his car, watching the world rush by. His cold eyes scanned the crowd, lifeless faces scurrying for shelter. None of them mattered. His world was about control, power and fear, emotions that kept him untouchable. And then he saw her, a girl sprinting across the street, clutching a flimsy umbrella that flipped inside out in the wind. Her soaked hair clung to her face as she stumbled, nearly falling. Jungkook's gaze locked on her, not because she was beautiful, but because she looked so lost. Jungkook, idiot, he muttered, shaking his head, yet something about her held his eyes. The umbrella twisted again, and this time she let out a frustrated laugh, soft, sweet, and so genuine that Jungkook couldn't look away. Her laughter wasn't forced, it wasn't desperate. It was like she found humor in her own helplessness. Moments later, she ducked into a nearby Vicks store. Still drenched, her cheeks flushed pink. Jungkook should have ignored her. He had no reason to fire, but his legs moved on their own. Inside the bookstore, 𝐊𝐿 was in her own world, browsing a shelf of old paperbacks. Water dripped from her hair as she flipped through pages, completely unaware of the man watching her from a few feet away. You're ruining the book, Jungkook said flatly. 𝐊𝐿 turned, startled. Excuse me. You're dripping water all over it, Jungkook said, her eyes widened in horror as she stared at the damp pages in her hand. Oh no, I didn't mean to. It's fine, Jungkook cut in, taking the book from her. I'll pay for it, you don't have to. 𝐊𝐿 protested. I want to, Jungkook's voice was sharp. Yet something about her innocence softened his tone. 𝐊𝐿 smiled, warm and grateful. Thank you, I'll pay you back. You can't, Jungkook said. What? 𝐊𝐿 replied, I don't take refunds. Jungkook smirked, for the first time in years. Jungkook felt something unfamiliar, something dangerously close to peace. Author POV, days turned into weeks. And somehow, 𝐊𝐿 kept appearing in his life, whether by fate or sheer coincidence. She'd smile when they crossed paths, wave like they were old friends. Jungkook, a man feared by enemies and worshipped by allies, found himself craving those moments. And soon enough, those stolen glances turned into long conversations, quiet drives, and stolen kisses under the city lights. YN lay with her head on Jungkook's shoulder. "Promise me you'll never leave," YN had whispered one night, her fingers curled around his. Jungkook had kissed her forehead and whispered back, "I swear." At the time he believed it. But promises are only as strong as the word they're made in. And their world was destined to break. Author POV. Time had a strange way of moving when YN was around. For someone like Jungkook, who lived in a world where power dictated every breath, her presence felt like a pause button on his chaotic life. She was soft-spoken yet stubborn, innocent yet fearless, and somehow, her simplicity felt like magic. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, Jungkook and YN sat on his terrace. The city stretched before them. Flickering with lights, a cold breeze blew past, making YN shiver slightly, without a word. Jungkook slipped off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. 𝕊𝚗𝚗𝚒𝐻𝐵 Do you always care so quietly? YN teased, flashing a smile. 𝕊𝚗𝚒𝐻𝐵, it's just a habit. Jungkook muttered, lighting a cigarette. YN wrinkled her nose. You know that's bad for you. And yet I'm still alive, Jungkook shot back. Smirking, YN snatched the cigarette from his fingers and threw it over the railing. Not anymore, for a second. Jungkook just stared at her. No one, absolutely no one, dared to defy him like that. But instead of being angry, he laughed. A deep, genuine laugh that felt foreign even to him. 𝕊𝚗𝚗𝚒𝐻, you are mad, Jungkook said. Shaking his head. Maybe, YN grinned. But someone has to keep you human. Her words hit harder than she knew. Human, something Jungkook hadn't felt in years. Author POV. Days turned into weeks. And YN's presence became a part of his life. Her phone calls, her silly messages, her habit of leaving notes in his office that said things like, "Don't forget to smile," or "One less cigarette today." Jungkook didn't know when, but she had quietly slipped into his heart. And for the first time, love didn't feel like a weakness. It felt like home. One night, while walking YN home, Jungkook paused outside her door. YN, his voice was softer than usual. Promise me, no matter what happens. You'll stay with me. YN's smile faded. Why are you saying this? Just promise me, he insisted, his hand gripping hers tightly. YN stepped closer and cupped his face. I'm not going anywhere, Jungkook. I promise, he kissed her forehead, whispering, I swear I'll protect you from everything. But some promises are made only to be broken. From a dark corner across the street, a shadowy figure watched them, a man with cold eyes and a cruel smile. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number, and muttered, He's getting weak, that girl will destroy him. The storm had begun, and neither Jungkook nor YN knew what was coming. Author POV love had crept into Jungkook's life like a quiet breeze, gentle, yet impossible to ignore. YN wasn't just a person anymore. She was his escape, his peace, his reason to smile without knowing why. One evening, as the rain poured outside, YN sat cross-legged on Jungkook's living room floor. Scrolling through her phone, Jungkook leaned back on the couch. Watching her, her hair was damp, and her oversized sweater looked 3 sizes too big for her. But to him, she'd never looked more perfect. Why are you staring? YN asked, raising an eyebrow. Can't help it, Jungkook said, a lazy smile spreading across his face. YN grinned and went back to her phone. A minute later, she gasped, Oh my God, look at this. She turned her phone towards him, a ridiculous meme of a cat wearing sunglasses. That's not funny, Jungkook deadpanned. Yes, it is, YN insisted, giggling. No, it's stupid. Fine, YN huffed. Then tell me what makes you laugh. 𝕊𝚗𝚗𝚒 stupid body, Jungkook replied instantly, earning a playful smack on his arm. Moments like these were simple, yet they made Jungkook forget the weight of the world on his shoulders. With YN, he didn't have to be the ruthless kingpin or the powerful businessman. He was just Jungkook. I hope you liked the first episode of Jungkook Dark Indian FF series. To be continue.